I must have applied to 1,000 jobs and done 200 interviews. I did not get a single job. I failed so much. I said, yes, of India ka fault. I went to the US, I failed there also. What is the fundamental issue with finding mates? People you like don't like you back. सबका रोना यही है. If you really want a great marriage, marry somebody who you can talk to a lot. Because after a few years, that's all you'll be doing.
The new generation does not believe as much in the concept of, yes, companionship maybe,
Yeah.
but marriage as a concept may be getting redundant.
I don't think companionship, the need for that is going away anywhere. Will it still be called marriage? I don't know. It doesn't matter.
Hello and welcome to My Way. My guest on the show today needs absolutely no introduction. He's sitting right here with me, Anupam Mittal. Thank you so much for joining us.
Pleasure, Sonia. Pleasure to be here.
Okay, but for the uninformed,
Yeah.
let me tell our viewers, he's the OG startup founder. I think he's invested in over 250 businesses.
Something like that.
Yeah.
Who's keeping count? Right?
But, I think one of the first founders in the whole startup ecosystem, right, with Shaadi.com and all of that. So it's been, 2 decades now of your journey?
Yeah, it's been a long time, 20 years, and I feel lucky because our industry is such that a lot of people come and go. Itne founders aaye, gaye, you hear about them, then you don't hear about them, and you hear about the companies. But I've had the good fortune to still be around, still building, still investing, sold a couple of companies. One or two brands are still very well known across the country, even across the globe. So yeah, I think, it's been a great journey, and I look back and I'm full of gratitude.
Okay, I have so much to ask you
Oh, yeah.
about. I don't know where to start, but I'm going to start with how you managed to stay so relevant
Yeah.
in the last 2 decades. What's your secret sauce?
I'm very afraid of irrelevance. I think let's start with that. Seriously. I think when you're afraid of irrelevance, you try to reinvent yourself. Everybody fears failure. How can you not fear failure? Failure, living with accepting that you're not good enough. How is that not fearful? So I have to always feared failure. And one of the things that keeps driving me forward, and today even, I don't really consider myself super successful by any stretch of the imagination.
You're just
And-
being modest.
No, I'm not. Modesty mere mein hai hi nahi. What I'm good at, I'll embrace. What I'm not, I'll tell you very honestly. I have no modesty.
So what is your definition of
Modesty
success?
and
If you,
humility and all of these words are all great in our Indian context. Humble. Oh, he's so humble. Arey, humble kab se virtue ho gaya, bhai? I don't get some of these things. So my point I was trying to make to you is fear to me is a great driver, right? Fear of failure. And for me, it's been driving me a lot over the last 20 years. And at some point, you have to embrace it. So instead of saying, I will not fear, you have to say, I will go forward despite the fear, right? And, right from the beginning, if you'll indulge me, I'll give you another line, right? I failed so much. As a teenager, I started businesses because I come from a business family. मेरे 2-3 business तो वहीं fail हो गए थे, right? And I used to blame this country because I was so arrogant. Because as a teenager you are, and I'm only son, so I was spoiled anyway. I said, yes, of India ka fault. I went to the US, I failed there also, right? I'm not kidding you. Then I graduated there. I said, पढ़ाई करेंगे तो थोड़ा सीखने को मिलेगा. I applied to jobs. I must have applied to 1,000 jobs and done 200 interviews. I did not get a single job, right? लड़ करके मर के persevere करके I finally got a job. And then I worked there for a few years and I started my own company. I came back. But what I find amazing when you ask me a question like that and join the dots is that a guy who was rejected so many times in every aspect and who had very little chance to be successful. If you had asked anybody in my family, extended family or friends, family, they always call me the black sheep of the family. Was this guy has no chance to ever make it into something meaningful, right? Fortunately, his dad has a business. And today I'm sitting with you here and you actually lost the number when you said, how many companies have you invested in?
I did.
Because I have, right? And I've built a few companies. And it just goes to show that you don't need to be particularly smart or particularly lucky. You just need to persevere and stay with it and, keep moving forward. And that's what I've done. And I think it's not glamorous, but that's really been my way or
No, I
my
think
modus operandi. Yeah.
consistency always works better than perfection in
Yeah.
anything that you do, right?
Possibly.
But you are someone who has been the OG startup founder. And now startup has become like this sexy word. Everyone's starting businesses left, right, and center. For that 20 or 25-year-old who's looking to start his or her own business, what would your advice be to them?
Wow. Right off the top, advice for that 25-year-old. You know, Sonia, something that I learned very late in life, and if I could go back to my early self, this is what I would tell that person is learn good decision making. You know what's amazing? हम school जाते हैं, you are taught history, geography, mathematics. When were you taught decision making? पैदा कर दिया, your parents brought you into the world, raised you, food, clothing, shelter. Abhi figure it out. Stumble, maybe you'll make a wrong decision 20 years later. You'll still be struggling with that decision. You know, you are just brought into the world and left, and you could make really bad decisions. But there is a way to make decisions. We don't even understand the basics. So today, if somebody's starting out, I would first say that look, before making or starting a company is a big decision. Why are you doing it? Do you understand? And as you get into it, you will then make a lot of big decisions that will impact not just your employees, customers, and so on, investors, and so on. Do you understand decision making? So what I learned, as I was saying late, not very late in life, was decision making generally, broadly speaking, happens from 3 or 4 different perspectives, right? One is intelligence or logic. One is emotional. One is conditioning, and one is ego. And more often than not, we don't even understand where that decision is coming from. So when it comes to my daughter or my family, sure, I want to make emotional decisions. Aaj kaam pe nahi jana hai because she's crying. So that's an emotional decision, no logic. Work might suffer.
Absolutely.
Right? But if I'm making a business decision, then I want it to be based in logic. Right? As far as conditioning goes, I don't want to make any decisions based on conditioning because I have nothing to do with it. वो खाली impose कर गया कि बड़े होके ये करते हैं, right? And as far as ego goes, maybe if somebody is being a real ass to me, maybe I want to use ego as a card, but I want to be aware of these things, right? At any given time, we are making decisions with a combination of these things. So to understand this and to try to get some mastery over this can make you lethal, right? And it took me a long, long time to get this right.
That's interesting.
Or not, I
actually.
haven't still gotten it right. To understand it, I should say.
Well, it's interesting because I think as children, we are not allowed to take any decisions, right? I think now I have a 6-year-old son.
Yeah.
I give him a lot of
Oh, you should get them
space
together.
to-
I have a
we
6-year-old
should.
daughter.
Oh, we should. And I must say that this generation, this new generation that we are raising, because we've given them the space to take decisions, they know what they want.
They know what they want and they make it painful for you. Sometimes I think maybe it was best not to. Because now I cannot get her to do anything. Every decision, I have to do inception for everything. Right? So her, it has to be her
I feel
decision.
your pain.
It has to be her decision. But you're right. They are completely, in her language, bro, it's my decision.
Yeah. They know what they want. So that's interesting, right? Because for you, I think decision making assumed a little more importance because of the sheer number of businesses that you have invested in, right? We were talking about how over 200 startups. So how do you make that decision? How do you decide? What are the red flags that you look at when you're deciding to invest in a company?
Yeah, so I'll give you a sense. But just to correct that, today's generation is making decisions early. Yes, they are. But I'm still not sure that they are clear about where those decisions are coming from. They're just making them. What I was talking about is being clear about how you're making decisions and why you're making them, right? So I think that part still needs a little work. And I'm trying to do that with my daughter. But she's, no, I just feel it. So I'm like, okay, logic.
It'll take
But-
some work.
It'll take time. We'll get there. But look, in terms of how I make investments, ideally, I want to say it's something very simple where I give somebody a check and after a couple of years, they come back and give me 100 times as much. But that's the expectation. But look, I think, where we come in, right, Sonia, it's very early stage. Whether it's Shark Tank or whether it's off the tank, right? So it's really early stage. And, my first investment I had made was back in 2007. And, it was called Interactive Avenues, and it became India's largest digital ad agency. And really, at that point, I didn't even know it was called angel investing, right? I thought angels is something you become after you die, right? Have you not even heard the word? And there were these four guys who were employees in a digital ad agency, and they were selling me services. And I was so convinced that India needs a large digital ad agency in the future. I said, why don't you come out and build your own, and I'll fund it. And I was flying somewhere. They came to the airport, and I sat in the lounge and wrote them a check. Right? I had so much conviction in that idea, and also because it was so early stage. And really, it was about those people, and it was fundamentally about the market, that the West has $1 billion digital ad agency. India mein bhi banegi, right? And it became one of my best investments. I ended up owning the largest share in that ad agency because I came so early and I put in so much money. And then we brought Sequoia in, right? But as time went on, deal making became more competitive. And, so much noise entered the system that having clarity in terms of what will work and what will not work, separating the noise from the signal has now become really, really hard, right? तो पहले जो gut पे हो जाता था, instinct पे हो जाता, now requires a little more deliberation. So fundamentally, broadly, team, because of the early stage and because of so many variables stacked up against you, is and continues to remain the most important factor.
Also, early stage investing is hard, right? Because you don't know about the credibility of the people that you're trusting your money with. But at the same time,
there's no track record.
There's no track record. Yeah. You're just betting on the industry, so to speak. I mean, you were an early stage investor in Ola, an early stage investor in Big Basket. Yeah. Did you know at that time that these are trends and are going to pick up in a big way?
So you're absolutely right. You're betting on the team, right? So there are some companies I've invested in where we started out with a proposition which was very different from what they actually became, right? Because you don't know how things will play out. So so that was about team, but let me come to your second half of the question, which is Ola or some of these other companies. Did I know that they will become as big? No, absolutely not. I thought they'll do well, just say, but who was thinking billions of dollars, right? Ola was in 2011. Nobody was thinking 100 unicorns, companies will have $5 billion, $7 billion, $10 billion valuation. No, absolutely not. In fact, the first two times I said no to Bhavish.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
Yeah. I thought it was, I'll tell you why. Your perspective of investing, it's very interesting. Yeah. It's very much shaped by your own experiences. Yeah. How much have you tried to be objective? Now, you're from Bombay, right? Yeah. बॉम्बे ऑल आर लाइव्स, आप बिल्डिंग से बाहर निकलो काली पीली मिलती है, तो टैक्सी की प्रॉब्लम ही नहीं है. तो माई रिस्पॉन्स इज ऑलवेज बॉस, प्रॉब्लम क्या सॉल्व कर रहे हो, राइट? बट आई हैपन टू बी इन दिल्ली एंड देयर वर नो टैक्सीज एंड आई वाज वन, दे सेड हम टैक्सी स्टैंड फोन करते तब टैक्सी आती है. सो आई सेड ओह. सो आई केम बैक, इट वाज फ्रेश इन माई माइंड एंड आई कॉल्ड हिज कॉल सेंटर एंड आई नोटिस ही यूज्ड टू आंसर द फोन हिमसेल्फ.
Really?
तो आई सेड बॉस प्रॉब्लम तो है और ये खुद लगा हुआ है, तो कुछ तो बन सकता है यहाँ पर. नाउ वेदर इट विल बिकम दिस बिग, आई हैड नो आइडिया, राइट? एंड सो दोज आर द काइंड ऑफ थिंग्स यू फाइंड सम evidence of excellence or some evidence of extraordinary aspects in the founder, and that's when you take the bet. So that's what I felt with
you
Ola.
Find that there is a big problem that needs to be solved.
Yeah, so which is the second part, right? There's team, and team may you look at the business acumen, the ability to learn and move fast, and then there is TAM, which is total addressable market, because large markets are very forgiving, right? And small markets are brutal. So you can be an amazing entrepreneur, but if the market is small and unforgiving, the market will win, unfortunately. So you want to ensure that the vision or the dream or the opportunity they're going after is large enough. And then the third thing is timing, right? Never underestimate the power of timing, right? Today, what do we look around and see? Incredible brands being created in D2C, right? Luggage में brand बन रहा है, sound में brand बन रहा है, कपड़ों में brand बन रहा है. Everywhere you look, there's emerging brands. If you go back to my website, 10 years back, I wrote that India is so under-branded that we need thousands of brands over the next few years that will be created over the next 2 decades, right? It's still there. But what has changed is the timing. suddenly you are not dependent on all these layered distribution of the yesteryears to get your product out. You can just use the internet. The infrastructure for shipping, logistics is already there. Payments are not a problem. Everybody's UPI now, everybody's comfortable transacting online. So today, launching a D2C brand is very obvious. But 7 years back, if you were an investor, active investor in D2C brands, you would have struggled to make money. Right? So even if team and your market size TAM is fine, the first two T's, the third T, timing also has to be equally important. Right?
Okay.
So I think these are the three things that you broadly look at in early stage investing.
So let's try and talk about the market now,
Yeah.
right? I mean, India has the largest Gen Z population as a percentage of its overall population in the world.
That's right.
Maybe after Pakistan, Nigeria, I
Yeah.
think India comes third. But
Right.
just by the sheer size, India has 27% of its population is Gen Z.
That's right. I would say in terms of purchasing power, we have the largest Gen Z purchasing power in the world.
Okay. So,
Right? If you take population and multiply by.
so India has the largest Gen Z purchasing power in the world.
Yeah.
That is the market that you want to target.
Yeah.
What are the problems that Gen Z is facing that you want to address?
Yeah, see, wow. The problems I want to address, I think, look, so we can look at very prosaic stuff like you look at every consumption category and you look at the brands that exist. 80-90% of these brands are tired old brands, right? They don't have any freshness about them. They're trying to reinvent themselves, but they're just old brands. And does the new generation, forget Gen Z, even the millennials don't really relate to them. Imagine what will happen with Gen Alpha,
Yeah.
right? So some will most certainly reinvent themselves, but many will lose market share.
Like, give
And
me
the-
examples of tired old brands. We were talking about luggage, okay? So let me give you an example that I can
Mokobara.
think. Mokobara.
Right, you got it, right? Then there's a couple of others. Travel for the new generation is one of the top things in their life, right? And India will be one of the largest travel markets, externally bound and inbound, over the next several years. Here comes a brand in a category that has no brands. Excuse me, we have VIP. VIP के नाम का underwear बिक रहा है अभी, right? So, and they did a good job. Other brands also came, but they couldn't hold on to, because creating a brand doesn't mean advertising, right? It doesn't mean just positioning. It means consistency. It means having a story and telling that story repeatedly and having a promise that you continuously deliver on. And they got that right? So they got aspiration with some level, of course, they are skimming, so they are not targeted at mass, they are premium, right? But they're still much less than some of these foreign brands. So in India, coming back to your question of what would I do for Gen Z, I would look at anything where aspiration is very high, because our aspiration is now global aspiration, because the internet has made the world flat.
Yes.
जो न्यूयॉर्क में बच्चा aspire कर रहा है, वो बम्बई के slum में भी बच्चा aspire कर रहा है,
exactly.
right? People are becoming influencers and celebs out of slums also,
Yes,
right?
yeah.
So anything that has high aspiration and low affordability, right? India is in a lower affordability market.
Price
If you
conscious
can
market,
bridge the gap between aspiration and affordability, right? It doesn't mean it has to be cheap, but it has to be relatively cheaper than what you're paying today for some of these Samsonites, for example, and so on. So if you can do that, then you've got a winning formula, right? And you can pick any category for that, right? You look at clothing, H&M, what have they done? They have fundamentally taken aspiration and made it affordable. Better example is Zudio from Tata, right? They have made it even more affordable. Thoda aspiration maybe not there, but still. So there's a window for everything. I mean, one of my great examples is masalas.
Yeah.
If I get time, I'd love to do it. Sure, maybe it's not a high involvement category, but still I feel like a contemporary masalo ki company nahi ban sakti hai badi. And these are large businesses, very profitable. So I think this is one area. I think total.
But it's not aspirational.
It can. That's my point. It can be made aspirational.
Depends on who you're targeting.
They go clean. Yeah, exactly. You can make it aspirational.
Yeah. So you have investments across industries, right?
Right.
You've invested in drone manufacturing companies. You've invested in Rupeek, which
Rocket.
is in gold
Yeah,
gold
gold.
financing. And
Agni Kul, which is sending a rocket this month to space.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So how does that work? I mean, do you think that are you now focusing more on investing into sectors which are sectors of the future, renewable energy, electric vehicles, drone manufacturing and all of that?
So one area I already gave you. So the broad, I love brands. I love D2C. I've created brands my whole life. So, building customer propositions, differentiating yourself and gaining market share. I think that's something that instinctively I get. But the second area, which also I worked on, is using technology to deliver services and products. So anything that's, potentially going to build a lot of value in the coming decades. So the big themes for me right now, for example, one is space, and that's why we invested in Agnikul, which is essentially democratizing sending payloads to space, right? If you want to go in SpaceX, Elon Musk SpaceX, you have to wait for a year. You have to have minimum payload. You have to spend $50 million or whatever it is to be able to send a payload. If you're a small satellite, which are now 2-3 kgs, you can send it via Agnikul in a 3D customizable rocket, which can be fired off the back of a truck without waiting a week, right? At a very minuscule cost, right? So that's the reinvention, right? It's kind of like, having the option to only buy a Mercedes or being able to hire an Ola, right? So they are doing that to the space industry. Similarly, I think there are a lot of other areas like AI is becoming very interesting, right? So I'm very excited about AI, but I'm very disappointed as well because India's losing the race.
Why do you feel that?
Because we don't have any foundational AI models in India. We are essentially building wrappers on top of OpenAI or Google's Bard or Facebook's platform or Amazon's platform. But India itself does not have any foundational models, right? And
Where do you think the gap is?
I think the gap is that fundamentally this is a big data, big tech, and big capital game. So all these companies have been working on these areas for the last. We are only seeing it now because Chat GPT suddenly took off,
Yeah.
and everybody's played with it, and everybody can make funny poems and images, and so we are now familiar with it from a consumer end. But these companies have been working on AI for the last decade, if not more, right? And it's one of those things that it's so complex and it requires so much data and so much learning that you cannot cut short the time. And so they've built their models now, and their models are now platforms that other people are building on. So, India today, most of the work going on here is on the surface where we are using their platforms and building models on top. And so, which is disturbing because the future is AI. Just like,
It is.
let's look at the internet. In India, the largest internet companies are the global guys. Google and Facebook take away the lion's share of Indian digital revenue, right? If that happens again in AI, because AI is going to permeate every industry and every person, that means we are giving away our future to these companies.
I want to talk about that, the
Yeah.
Google, the new billing system. And
Yeah.
I know that you guys have all you startup founders have
Yeah.
sort of come together and you're calling it the Lagan tax and everything. Tell us,
Fun.
what is the main grievance over there?
Well, this is a big, big, big issue, right? And Google will try to make light of it because that's what they do. Monopolists generally do that, right? The playbook is very simple, right? It's kind of like a dictatorship where you first fight for the people. So they came in as democratizing the internet, and then you kind of usurp everything possible in your wake, and then you start working against the exact same people who made you what you are. So I think this is a fairly standard playbook. And so they will make light of it by saying, look, this is the price you pay for being on our platform. But that hides a lot of truths. The fact is, Google wants to charge, or is attempting to charge, anywhere from 15 to 30% of any revenue that an app makes if it is downloaded from their app store, from their Play Store, right? Now remember, Google already makes anywhere from 20% to 50% of most companies, digital companies' revenue in India, because by way of advertising, because they're such a monopoly and they do bundling, which is their app store comes bundled or their Play Store comes bundled on every Android operating system. You don't have a choice if you want your app to become popular to be on their app store, to be on the Play Store. And so you end up as a result, because you want to also push your app up and up against competitors, you end
For
up
discovery,
paying, for
basically.
discovery, you end up paying them 20, 30, 40, 50% of your revenue
Are you
at
serious?
early stages. It's brutal, it's criminal. And then what Google does, which is again abuse of dominant position, is if you search for a certain brand, they will ensure they show the competition's brand. So now you are bidding for your own brand to be shown on top for the term that the customer searched for, which was yours. So they've used your information to fight against you. So it's kind of an arms dealer mindset that will arm competitors more and more and more, equally and equally, until they killed each other. Right?
Wow.
But that's how it's played out. But
So
the
that was what was happening so far, and now there is this additional
Right.
charge.
So that's what was happening earlier. Now what they want to do, GPBS, Google Play Billing System, or UCB, which is the new fancy word, Users Choice Billing. They've called it so that, they think just these little cosmetic changes will fool our courts and our judiciary. Essentially what they want to do is, if an app is downloaded from the App Store, in addition to all the advertising money that they make, companies will also pay anywhere from, I think, about 15 to 29% or 11 to 29%, depending on the category that you fall in and the services that you use, of their revenue to Google.
Okay, that's bizarre.
It's criminal.
Yeah.
If it was not so tragic, it would be funny. And their argument is that we are providing you a platform as a service. Well, and we are providing you billing services. But billing services cost 1.2%. We use billing services from other payment gateways. And the response to that is very simple. The argument is very simple. The counter argument is, please provide every service and price it at 30%, no problem. But let the app developers or anybody be free to choose anybody's service.
Yeah.
If you're not competitive, who is going to choose yours? If I can choose Razorpay for 1.2%, why will I pay you 30%?
Exactly.
Right? So you provide, unbundle your services and let the market compete. What they are trying to do is force you to use their services. And if you don't use it, then explicitly a user will have to say, no, I will not use this, I will use this other service. At which point also you will pay them 11 or 15%. Right? So essentially it's a tax. They're trying to take the government's role. And frankly, it's what I call the Digital East India Company. We, a few hundred years back, didn't pay attention to a little rickety sort of trading company being set up in India. And pretty soon they ruled us for 200 years.
So where are we at right now in this fight?
It's in the courts. The CCI came out with such a strong order against them, imposing a penalty and saying Google cannot have any conditional billing systems or charge this kind of fee in letter and in spirit. What does Google do? Take that order, change the name of the service they're offering and water it down a little bit and claim fees under that. And says, look, we've done away with this. So obviously we went back to CCI. But given that courts generally take time and given that Google has so much resources and they're fighting this battle globally, right? And remember, they do arbitrary treatment. So they have arrangements with Spotify and with Netflix where they don't charge that commission to American companies who are trying to take over Indian consumers. But to all Indian companies, they're going to charge this commission. So what do? They come in and they change old wine in a new bottle. And obviously justice takes time. So while we are fighting that, a lot of companies are dying. I'm certain eventually our courts, government has already made enough noise about this, are going to come out very heavy on them. But what we should realize is 1,000, 2,000 crores makes no difference to Google. It's chump change. It's a rounding of error.
It's the
So I
smaller
think
startup guys that will get. But okay, just to understand
there should
this,
be a $1 billion fine at the very least, in my view. And I think it'll happen.
If I'm somebody who's starting a company
Yeah.
and I want both discovery on Google's platform and to use the Google billing system, currently you're saying that in excess of 30% is the kind of charges that they
You
take
will
from
end
me.
up paying, depending on how much you want to do. Discovery means you can go crazy
Yeah.
and pay more than your revenue, or you can budget it. So regardless, at the bare minimum, you will end up paying. Of course, Google will say that we only charge people who are making more than $1 million of revenue and all that, but all that is really pulling the wool over people's eyes. You will, as a startup, end up paying anywhere from 25% to 50-60% of your revenue to Google.
Wow.
Right. So pretty much kills all innovation and incentive for companies to build in India. Unless, of course, you're an e-commerce company, in which case you don't have to pay because the product is delivered offline. But if you're a pure internet company, like a gaming company, an edtech company, a matchmaking company, or any such company, content company, subscription company, you're going to have to pay Google all this money.
Okay, well, I hope for the
And
sake
then
of
for
the...
whatever's left over, the Indian government, if you make any profit,
You'll
will
pay
make
them.
some money, right?
Of course. That...
So who becomes your overlord? Not the Indian government anymore. It's Google. And imagine this is with the power of the internet. And we all thought the internet would be decentralized, right? But it's actually concentrated power even more. Now we all think AI, for some reason, will be even more concentrated. Because AI builds on data and builds more data. These are virtuous cycles. So in the end, when it comes to AI, there'll be 2-3 companies globally. So pretty much that's the end, right? As far as our future goes, because everything will be digital in the future.
Okay, well, for the sake of the startup industry, I
Yeah.
hope that this, you
Me
guys
too,
win this battle.
Look, me as an investor, right? As you know, I invest obviously for returns, but also to give back. For me, it's important that we help, because India didn't have a digital capital ecosystem for very long. Most capital was raised overseas, so we started doing what we could, some of us internally. So not just from a profit standpoint, but even just from our own nationalist agenda, if you will. We have to protect this. There is no choice.
Okay, but let's get back now to talking about the fun things, right?
Things. This is fun though.
I'm sure the battle is not fun,
Yeah.
but yeah, this is for the larger good of the startup ecosystem. But tell me, what has your best investment been so far?
Cash in, cash out, I would say, and interactive avenues I spoke about, right?
Yeah.
Because it was only a matter of few years and I owned such a significant chunk of the company, we exited several hundred crores was the price. But because I owned a significant chunk of the company, it turned out to be great because I got all cash. So it was my first angel investment. I didn't know it was called angel investment. So there's something to the adage of, be foolish and be hungry, right? Because when you're naive, fortune tends to favor you. And so that was possibly one of my best. The other one was, again, Makaan.com, but it was a company I founded also.
Yeah, you did.
But interestingly, we were almost at the verge of shutting it down because of lack of capital. But what I did, my investors didn't want to fund it anymore. So we spun it out. And I took some of the money I made from my other deal at Interactive and put it in Makaan.com, saying, let me at least finance it for the next 12 to 18 months and see what happens. And somehow I read the tea leaves pretty well that the segment was getting competitive and there will be consolidation. And lo and behold, consolidation started to happen and a couple of companies came our way. And then, REA Group, which was News Corp's company, bought us out. And so we combined to Makaan, Housing, and Prop Tiger. And so I made multiple times my money and it was a window of 2 years. So from a cash in, cash out, these were possibly two very, good solid investments. I think from return and absolute value, Ola obviously ranks top of the list. I haven't still exited Ola.
Okay.
But
you have 2%, I think, a little over that.
I haven't counted, no.
Okay.
I haven't really taken stock of what
And what
I
about
have.
the worst investment?
Oh, God.
A long list.
Wow. Yes and no. This is the model, no, Sonia? So if the early stage investing is such that if you're not writing off a lot of companies, then you're not taking enough risk. And if you're not taking enough risk in early stage investment, you're not going to make enough money to justify your bad bets. So that doesn't bother me. What troubles me really is when we can see the writing on the wall, when we're constantly giving that input to the founding teams, and there's enough opportunity and time for the founders to get it right, but they still don't. And as a result, a lot of people end up losing their jobs, a lot of investors end up losing their money. And that's what's troubling more than anything else. Not the companies being written off or shut down. That happens. I wo ek minute, 2 दिन लगता है, another so much money gone. But
Another
then you
dud.
done. But then you realize that's the model. You're fine. Then you get news that one of the companies has done very well. You're done, right? You sleep well that night. But when that happens, right, when founders just are hell-bent on driving into a wall, that's the most troublesome. And that's happened, most recently with a company called Lido, and earlier with a company called Pretty Secrets, which was a lingerie. First in the market, right? Incredible opportunity.
So what went wrong?
I just explained,
Oh.
right? So, you just sort of
You win
stay-
some, you lose some.
Yeah, but when you're there at the right, I mean, it's like the World Cup, right? And you're at the crease, and you need one run to win, and you get the best ball that you possibly can,
Yeah.
and you screw that up, it hurts for a long, long time. And this is what I relate these two. It's like what happened with India and Australia. We won 10 on a trot, and then it was ours for the taking. Right.
It's also sometimes about luck, right? Not just about talent and timing, also about luck, I guess.
Of course, but I try to minimize the role of luck, because if I started, then that's what happens, right? Like all Indians, we end up becoming very fatalistic. Jo hona tha ho gaya types, or jo hoga wahi hoga. And then really, that's a great way of not doing anything. But
So with Shaadi, right? Let me talk about that, because this is peak Shaadi season.
It
I mean,
is.
we have 35 lakh weddings in this
isn't it
season.
crazy? In the next 25 days, I know.
Yeah.
I'm getting invitations all the time, but Shaadi ka laddu, yeah, jo khaya, you know that, no? Yeah.
So what's your advice to all the people getting married now?
See,
Perennial advice.
I always say this, and people don't like it, because everybody has this very romantic notion of love, that, you should hear bells ringing and, feel like you're walking on air and all of that. And I say, look, that kind of love is basically a condition of your mind when your mind is not in condition. Right? If you really want a great marriage, marry somebody who you can talk to a lot. Because after a few years, that's all you'll be doing. और कुछ नहीं होगा तुमसे. So marry your best friend, right? In fact, very funnily, I had just gone to that new, what's that restaurant? Not, I forget, they just opened in a mall. Bastion.
See, I can read your mind also now. After talking to you
Just
for
20
so long.
minutes, I'm telling you. I've got no levels left to me, just completely open, right? But no, I was at Bastion, and these two couples came up to me who I thought were couples, right? And they were like, oh, hi, blah, blah, blah. And, we're big fans of the show and love you. And we took some pictures. And then they say, oh, by the way, we're looking for a life partner. And what do you advise? I said, oh, you guys are not together? They said, no. I said, they said, oh, we are all 4 best friends. I said, and you love going out and hanging out with each other? I said, yeah. And I said, but you look so good together, and you're all 4 very nice looking. Why wouldn't you just marry each other? Oh, no, we're friends. We need to fall in love, and that thing needs to happen. I was like, really? That's where you're going wrong. I said, go back and think about it. That's probably going to be the best thing for you. But I really believe that.
So are you married to your best friend?
Am I? Yeah, I walked into that one, didn't I? Well, sometimes you become best friends later. So yeah, I mean, in a way now I am, but no, I didn't start that way. I didn't. I had that falling in love experience as opposed to, discovering friendship and that.
But it's interesting, right? This whole business of matchmaking has evolved so much. I don't even know how the younger generation is doing it anymore. How are they getting together? Because how are they getting together? Because I think when we were younger, a lot of our generation would use matrimonial apps like Shaadi.com,
Yeah.
etc. Is it still relevant today? And do you think it's going to be relevant 10, 15 years from now? Are our kids going to be using these apps? Are they even going to be getting married?
Yeah, so it's a great question, right? I mean, and a lot will change in the world over the next 10 years, over the next 20 years. Uh, and I like to think about things that will not change, right? And I'll tell you what will not change. People wanting companionship, people wanting a life partner, and people wanting to procreate, because that is your fundamental programming. That's your DNA, right? Everybody in the animal kingdom, you are programmed to procreate. So there's already hormones in you that attract you to the opposite sex or to whatever sex you feel attracted to, because otherwise we will not survive. So I know that will not change. Now, uh, will you call it marriage? Will you call it something? That's irrelevant. It doesn't really matter, right? All I know is that you'll be seeking companionship. And in a world where the noise levels are increasing in every possible way, getting signals is becoming harder. Right? So you would think that being that we are so social and so outgoing, it's easier to meet people, talk to a few people around you, and it's harder. Right? That's one thing. The other thing that I think will not change is, earlier there was always a danger that India is becoming Western and we will suddenly be a very different culture. That's not happening. Indians are very rooted in our Indian culture. And what's happening in India is when we reach a certain age, right, because of our cultural ethos, conditioning, what we were talking about earlier, whatever you want to call it, the whole universe starts conspiring to get you married, right? Once you've hit your mid 20s or whatever. And even you start to think that, look, this is something I want to do. And, sure, some percentage of people fall in love and they hear those fireworks or whatever, right, which we spoke about. But a large percentage doesn't, right? So God doesn't have enough time to do it for everyone. He does it for a few people and then goes to sleep. And then we have to come in, right?
But
And
I don't know.
so
I think differently here. I think that this new generation,
yeah,
Gen Z or whatever they're called, the new generation does not believe as much in the concept of, yes, companionship maybe,
yeah.
but marriage as a concept may be getting redundant, is what I think. I don't know. I may be wrong.
Yeah, I think you are, because you would think that of the last generation in the US. They said the same thing, but Americans are getting married more than ever before, right? So it feels like that when they're young up to a certain point, but up to a certain age, and we've checked this out, we've done enough surveys, we talk to people all the time. What we are seeing emerging is the concept of planned marriage, right? Shaadi.com is not for arranged marriages, right? Arranged marriages are done and dusted. Arranged marriage was my parents. दो बार मिले हाँ की ना बोलो क्या करना है, right? That's gone, right? What is there now is I reached that age. I talk to my parents, beta, what do you think? Nahi, I need another couple of years. ठीक है, कोई बात नहीं. But at some point you decide together as a family कि अभी शादी कर लेनी चाहिए. And then you go about trying to find a life partner. कोई दोस्त है तेरे हमारा बता दो. नहीं है. अच्छा मैं किसको देखूँ नहीं. What about let's try this side. So you need alternatives, right? And when it comes to that age, you want as many options as possible, right? And we are one of the most credible options that gives you hope and that helps you along the journey. So I don't think companionship, the need for that is going away anywhere. Will it still be called marriage? I don't know. It doesn't matter. But we'll still be there offering companionship or connecting people in any way that they think works for them.
And so you see the future of Shaadi.com as something different from what it was 10 years ago. I'm trying to understand whether there's so much new technology, right? There's AI coming into everything.
Yeah.
So how do you see the future of matchmaking evolve?
Yeah, most certainly. I think, look, I could not tell you 10 years back how different it'll be 10 years later. And I can't tell you today how different it'll be 10 years from now. All I can tell you is the things that will not change, right? I know that today we use more than 100 machine learning and AI models in our system already. Our entire stack, software and platform, is completely run on AI and ML models, right? And so we are heavily tech-leaning organization. Will that increase in the coming time? Absolutely. As I said, noise is increasing more. Signals are becoming less, right? How do we figure out for people, So, for example, I'll tell you one big challenge, right? What is the fundamental issue with finding mates, People you like don't like you back. Right?
Basically.
सबका रोना यही है. Right? Now that discovery takes a lot of time, and offline you've spent a lot of time figuring out, chasing somebody, getting mixed signals, पैसे भी खर्चे हो गए, time भी बर्बाद हो गया until you figure out interest ही नहीं, right?
But when you launched Shaadi,
But
at
I'm saying
that time there was no Tinder, there was no Bumble, there was no dating apps, right?
Right. They're there today, but they're not working.
Yeah.
It's too much noise, too much noise. My point is, moving forward, using AI, using digital tech, I can improve the noise to signal ratio. So I can show you matches that are more likely to respond positively to you, right,
Interesting.
than otherwise. So now you're not spending a lot of time chasing people who are not
Saying yes to you.
saying yes to you. I don't know if I can make it 100%. I could, but then I would reduce your match pool to very small, right? But if I have to give you large enough match pool, so you also feel like you're exercising choice. ये लगना चाहिए ना कि दो चार लोगों के साथ जाके फिर settle. Otherwise you'll feel like
I'm
a loser.
making the decision and not a bot in the computer.
Exactly. Not an algorithm.
Not an
right?
algorithm.
तो मैं decision बना रहा हूँ. तो I have to give you enough of a match pool, but at least I can ensure an outcome. मतलब आपको पूरा ही डिप्रेस नहीं कर देंगे, right? So I think AI technology can do that, and we are working certainly on that, and I think that holds a lot of promise.
So basically, you guys are just, it appears as though I'm taking a decision for myself, but actually you're doing all the decision making for me.
ऐसा नहीं है. You are making the decision, but I do get to exercise choice in what I show you, right?
Yeah.
And if I'm absolutely almost certain that somebody is not going to respond to you, so I have to try to minimize that noise and try to improve the signal ratio, right? So that's the constant attempt, and AI does that wonderfully, because this is a big data problem. No human being can create rules to figure this out.
Okay. So let's just, just a couple of quick questions. I know we've gone on for a very long time, so quickly we'll try and wrap this up. Just a few more questions on entrepreneurship. You were giving us some very, very sane advice on young people looking to become entrepreneurs. You said one of the biggest skill you need perhaps is decision making.
Yeah.
What else? What are the top 2 or 3 things that I should look at, I should sort of harness if I want to become a successful entrepreneur?
Firstly, I think the big question, right? Abhi to the big fad is entrepreneurship is sexy. Of course, Shark Tank has had a role to play with it. The billions of dollars that have been raised by several founders has had a role to play with it. But why do you want to be an entrepreneur? Right? I'll tell you something very interesting and something I reflect on sometimes. The last time I took a vacation was like 20 years back.
No way.
Seriously. I'll tell you in what way. 20 years back when I was working for a company in the US, when I used to leave that company to take a vacation to come to India or go anywhere else, I was literally on vacation. वहाँ पर फिर आग भी लग जाए, कुछ हो जाए, there was nothing on my mind.
It's not your problem.
Right? I was literally worry-free. Since I've become a founder, there's not been a single day, whether I'm in vacation, I'm in Spain, I'm in Italy, I'm in Dubai, I'm in London, New York, doesn't matter where I am or what I'm doing on the beach in Maldives, somewhere there is something going on. Okay. So I think first thing, you must be very clear about why you want
But you're making all this money to reach all these destinations. You do realize that, right? That's the difference between a founder and someone who's getting a salary.
Yes and no, which is what I was going to come to, right? First thing is, you have to be clear about why you want to be an entrepreneur. Because contrary to what you're saying, the difference between a founder and an employee is money, is not true. There is no guarantee that you will end up as a successful entrepreneur, right? It's more likely that you won't. So if you're not clear and you're doing it because everybody else is raising and it's become sexy, then you are going to be faced with a lot of disappointment. What you should really be looking at, I believe, is what is the largest impact I can have on the world in my life, or on my, one dimension to look at. Now, if that entails joining somebody else's vision and having a job that creates massive impact, why not? Right? Why not? But if your only thing is कि मुझे अपनी कंपनी चलानी है, फिर तो आप पान वाली दुकान भी लगा सकते हो, right? So I think that clarity is very important. If there's a problem you want to solve, nobody else is solving, and you're passionate about it, by all means be a founder. But don't be a founder if you want to see your name in the paper saying raised money from XYZ VC, right? Or suddenly you're respected in your peer group because you're a founder. Those are the wrong reasons. The other thing that you have to be careful about, or you have to take into consideration, particularly in India, is it always takes 3 times more time than you thought it will, and 5 to 10 times the effort that you thought it will, right? So if you think entrepreneurship is going to be this hard, lay back, multiply that by 10 times, right? And know that it will be a lot harder than that. And are you willing to do that? Because ultimately, as I gave you my own story, my only superpower is perseverance. I will just keep getting up. You can knock me as much as you want, but what I've realized is मार खाने से ही जबड़ा मजबूत होता है, right? तो मुझे कुछ फर्क नहीं पड़ता, right? I will stand up every time. So if you have that quality, then by all means be an entrepreneur, because perseverance is your one asset as an entrepreneur, right? So I think these are the 2-3 things. Other than that, भगवान आपके साथ है.
Perseverance, decision making, and clarity of thought. Okay, that's amazing, and I hope you continue to always do that. Whenever you're hit hard, you just get back up and do
Yeah,
your thing, because
I
you're
hope
doing a
so
great
too.
job, not just for yourself but
Yeah.
for the entire ecosystem.
No, I'm loving it. I mean, especially what we are doing at Shark Tank and inspiring entrepreneurs.
Yeah, tell
Millions
me
of
about that. 3 seasons now.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's 3 seasons. I don't know when it started. I don't know how we ended up so quickly. I mean, third season is almost over in terms of shooting. And yeah, what do you want to know? I mean, there's so much I could go on.
What's been the big takeaway so far?
2 things, right? One for me has been, yeah, when you become a little bit successful as a founder, entrepreneur, you generally, every founder's story is this, that they start because they experienced a problem as an average person on the street or an average Joe, right? And they said, क्यों है ये problem? इसको solve करते हैं. But solve करते करते आप एक मुकाम तक पहुंच गए where you're disconnected from the rest of the world. जिसके लिए आपने बनाया था वो customer से disconnected हो गए. Because there's people around you, you don't interact, you come in your car, your driver drops you, you're just not connected. So I think one thing that's happened is when all these people came to Shark Tank, all these founders from tier 2, tier 3 cities, I was just blown away. I found that wonder again, that innocence with I started. All these, most of them have no idea what they'll do, how they'll do it. They just have a dream and a hope that somebody will finance them and they'll get to realize their dream. So I think that reconnection with, naivete or innocence, whatever you want to call it, was, truly magical for me. The second thing for me personally was, now because I'm recognized and even mobbed in places, you would think that, oh, do you get annoyed? But not really. I've actually enjoyed it because I get to interact with a lot of people. So I'll talk to people, kahan se ho tum kya? And you realize, when you talk to so many people from all walks of life, ultimately human beings are pretty much the same. They're just looking for, security, providing valuation.
No, validation also.
Validation, I thought he said.
And valuation.
Valuation. Providing for their family, right? Appreciation and validation, as you said. And valuation in my case, because I'm a Shark Tank investor. So I think that's been amazing in that way. Just opened up my eyes again. And I would say I was living in a very cocooned India before this. And I feel like now I'm living in Bharat.
Okay, on that note, Anupam, thank you so much for joining us. It
Thank
was
you,
really a
Sonia.
pleasure speaking with you. I didn't realize how time flew, but we got to learn a lot. Thank you so much and all the
Thank
best.
you. Thank you very much. And good luck to CNBC and you, Sonia.
Thank you.
Thank you for watching CNBC TV18. For all the latest news and updates, do follow us on our social media platforms.